There are uprisings happening across the country in every city, major city, small city, and now community across the United States, and it's become a global movement as well. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes real organizing to get to a point where these cities and these movements can sustain themselves. Baltimore, as many of you are aware, had an uprising just a few years ago, and once again, people are on the streets of Baltimore more demanding change. We are very grateful to have one of the lead organizers. He's Deputy Director of Organizing Black. Ralik Hayes is here to join us to tell us a little bit about what's happening on the ground in Baltimore right now. How you doing? Safe? Okay?
Okay, I'm safe right now. I'm tired, but I'm energized, right? Like I had to take the last 24 hours or so to really hunker down, get some rest, do some planning with the rest of my team and community members, because there's folks just we're at the point now where there are literally spontaneous protests popping up every time I blink. Wow. So I think today there were about 3 or 4 occurring in different communities. I literally just got a call that there was one occurring in Bel Air, Maryland, which is a very affluent area outside of the city limits, about 4,000 folks. Also a really racist area. So like just hearing that in these really predominantly white and typically racist areas of the city or the surrounding areas where people who have led the city have gone to move, that protests are happening is really shocking to me. Even during our uprising, during Freddie Gray at its height, didn't have this kind of energy.
You mentioned Freddie Gray. Let's go back in history, just a few years, obviously, because not much time has gone on. But how much has changed locally since the uprisings around Freddie Gray in the Baltimore area?
Well, systemically, nothing. But in people's hearts and minds, politically, I think there has been a significant change, particularly in the younger population. Those of us that were in like high school when Trayvon Martin happened. A lot of us are now leaders in the community, starting our own job, businesses, organizations, working places, and, we're politicized. So I see a shift, a deep shift. We're currently in the middle of a primary election that we're not exactly sure how it's going to go. I don't know if you've seen, but there's been severe irregularities, transparency issues, votes missing, people not getting ballots, people getting the wrong ballots, people being told they can't vote, right, because they've already voted or already received a ballot. All the issues that you could think of voter suppression, kind of similar to like the 1960s and civil rights movement, and during those times, all these things are seeming really like history repeating itself, except it's happening in a much more condensed fashion. Right, like our uprising was only 5 years ago, and Trayvon Martin was only a few years before, Mike Brown. Right. So like I'm seeing these things come much closer together, and this one is almost looking to be a little bit more sustained. I think I won't even say almost, it is.
So you had an uprising, 5 years ago, and it does take. I don't think people understand the level of organizing it takes to fight off this injustice, to get people on the streets, to push away instigators, to push away who knows who might infiltrate. I mean, we're seeing so many reports now of folks showing up and looting to distract and turn people against the movement. But now, you as an organizer are communicating with other cities around the country and learning from them. I mean, what kind of things are you learning from other cities to make sure that your organizing on the ground is?
I mean, we've always been in community with each other and have been sharing skills post our uprisings and like the incidents that happened in 2015 across the country, where like we'll say that certain cities had actual uprisings where they were like, a police murder cities, and there were the cities that were like active because they were supporting other cities. But all of us have been in deep community and learning, and we've done actions together and different things across the country. I won't get into too much detail, but I've built a lot of trust with these folks over the years that makes us much more ready for this moment. And so what it looks like is more complex actions, better infrastructure as these things snap together. We have jail support, we have bail funds, right? Like people aren't scrambling 3 days later about how do we do these things. We're on it.
Right.
We are really just, I think, in a space of being ready. And yes, it does take organization, but I also want to, be clear that like we are also holding space for those who have never, been to maybe never been to an action ever before, or never planned one or a protest, because they have a reason to be angry too. And so we're seeing a lot of that. And I think, to be clear, that it's not just organizers who have gotten us to that moment, but it's just everyday people who have decided to act and see other people's and feeling the urge to act, right? It's our job as organizers to hold that space and be like, this is actually how you make this sustainable. This is how you turn this from just anger to a strategy, right? And so I think that's where we're at this moment. And it's tiring because it's like, I'm literally getting a request every hour about how to help me plan this protest. Can you all attend and help us do this thing? We're real clear as organizers also about not policing people's rage and grief, right? So while we're not going to go loot, we're not going to condemn folks that are doing that, because you also have to think about in the same reason we're saying abolish the police because crime only happens in neighborhoods where people are lacking resources. We have to remember that we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? Where 3% of the country is out of work. And there are people in Maryland and in Baltimore that I personally know who have not received unemployment or any benefits. Right. And still out of work, right? So granted, looting hasn't happened here, but being clear about talking about the larger context of this moment we're in, right? Because it wouldn't have also happened without us being in a pandemic where people would legitimately have nothing left to lose but for change. Because what would have happened if the country were to open back up, right? And nothing's changed. There's no relief for renters, right? No relief for folks for their other bills, right? Seriously, not relief, because what forbearance does for homeowners, renters, or whatever, right? What that means is that when all this opens back up, you just owe all that money, right? Instead of then. And if you ain't been working, how are you going to pay it? Or if you haven't been able to get, what unemployment benefits you were promised, because there's so many people applying, what does that mean? So yeah.
Right. It's all the systemic issues that are being revealed that catapulted into this being a much more potent response than probably in the past, which, of course, cities had been under lockdown individually. They not nationwide, and now globally we're seeing. Thank you for watching The Nomiki Show. You can support us on YouTube by clicking subscribe, like, and sharing to get those alerts. And patrons, well, they make this show run on time. So thanks to all of you who have joined our community already. If you like our content and want more, from special segments to interviews and merch, you can join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. I'm spending all of my iced coffee money on other people's shows because I think this is the time that we have to support our independent media.